I'm Brylan, and this is part 3 of the Why You Should Study the Bible series. And part 1 and part 2 are already up. I really encourage you guys to go watch those first before digging into this video. This week we're going to be looking at 1 Peter 2 verses 1 through 3, and this might be a little bit of a shorter video, but I really want to look at the insight that these 3 verses has for our lives. 1 Peter 2, 1 through 3 says, "Therefore, laying aside all malice, all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and all evil speaking, as newborn babes, desire the pure milk of the word, that you may grow thereby, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is gracious." You see, not only does God's word give life, it nourishes life. His word says that like newborn babes, we should desire the pure milk of the word so that we may grow. A mother's milk is absolutely perfectly formulated to provide all the vitamins and nutrients that a baby needs to survive. But not just survive, to thrive. It also provides that baby with immunities from the mother that baby otherwise wouldn't get on their own. So it's imperative that that child be provided that milk. It's not an option. And here, God is placing such an importance on His word being absolutely necessary for our spiritual growth and nourishment that He compares it to a child that has no greater option for survival than to be provided the milk that will nourish his body correctly. Also, like the immunities help this baby fight off disease and infection, God's word builds our immunities as well, helping us to fight off the temptation and natural desire to turn back to our sin with acceptance. You know, we can easily find ourselves eating the wrong things. For many years, I ate whatever I wanted, and eating was really a big comfort for me. And food can make you feel emotionally fantastic. I mean, gathering around a table at your favorite restaurant with friends and family that you care about, eating a meal filled with meat and fat and carbs and grease and all of that. I loved the feeling that moment gave me. But it didn't last because I felt physically bad most of the time. I was constantly tired, had body aches and headaches, and it was very hard for me to concentrate on anything. And I found out actually many years ago that I had hypoglycemia. And so sugar and carbs, you know, my body wouldn't handle it very well when the carbs would turn into sugar. My body wouldn't be able to process the sugar correctly. And I absolutely loved my sweets, my cookies, my cakes, my ice cream, all of that. And I would eat those on a somewhat regular basis, not all the time, but it would be enough to cause really a constant lingering pain all the time. I got used to feeling bad and decided I would rather feel emotionally good in that moment than to focus on what would fuel my body properly. And now I have refined how I eat tremendously so that I can feel physically better more often than not. So I have to ask, what are you feeding your spirit with? You know, as believers, it's devastating when we don't have that appetite for God's word due to the guilt we feel from sin and shame. The Bible tells us that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And it also tells us in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." How do we come to Him? By earnestly seeking Him and His word. We all come to God's word with a heart that is heavy, either from addiction or depression or jealousy or untruthfulness. But we can all have the assurance that God already knew this, which is why 1 Peter 2:1 starts off with, "Lay aside all your malice, deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and evil speaking. God knew we were coming to Him and His Word with sin and defeat from this world. But like we saw earlier, God's Word enlightens us and equips us with spiritual insight to be encouraged and convicted to overcome that defeat. Charles Spurgeon, who was an English preacher in the 1800s, who is one of the most influential Christian preachers even to this day, he said, "A Bible that's falling apart usually belongs to someone who isn't." That means a Bible that's creased and battered and worn by the daily use of being in God's Word for ourselves builds us up spiritually to be able to overcome anything that comes our way. So let's all be aware of anything that's in our lives that can cause a hindrance in our walk with God. Ask God to reveal in your heart what malice or deceit or hypocrisy or evil speaking is in your life. You know, it can be things that we are completely unaware of. It's not always necessarily the burden from something that you know you shouldn't have done. So again, pray and ask God to open your heart and your mind to things that are pure, and that you would have an appetite of being daily in His Word and taste how sweet and nourishing it is to your spirit. So that's going to be it for today. Hey, if you liked this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and make sure to hit that subscribe button too and the little bell next to it, and you'll get notified whenever these videos go up. Next week, we're going to take a look to see what James has to say about all of this, and see that it's not just about reading God's Word, but also what we do with what we read that makes all the difference in our walk with God. We'll see you next week.